Two, one. I had to reinforce my soapbox this week, and I'm going to start right here. America, come to camera one because I only have one camera. America, we need to talk. There's been something terrible that's happened to you. I don't know why you're hurt. I don't know where they touched you. I know you need a hug. And this is what I need you guys to do this weekend. You have said terrible things about the new movie Pool Man by Chris Pine, and it hurts my feelings. Chris Pine is a national treasure. Never say anything bad about Chris Pine. And 3, 2, 1, we go. Madman Movies Podcast. Back in your life. I am Matt. That is Matt. We talk about movies. I only talk about Chris Pine on this podcast because Chris Pine is all movie that matters. Pool Man is out this week. Is there other things out? Yes.
Favorite Chris Pine movie?
Oh, boy. You know, I'm going to go randomly. He did the show about the Black Dahlia with the lady that directed Wonder Woman. That is my favorite Chris Pine. It was like a miniseries.
I thought you were going to say, what was it? What was that Disney movie he was in? The second one with, the joke failed.
Boo. But I did find out this week that he was in a movie and he was a blind man that was dating people, and it sounds awful. And you know what? I'm going to press play as soon as we're done with the podcast.
I'm going with Hell or High Water.
Yeah, that's probably the best answer. Though his character in Stretch, fantastic. That was probably the first time I fell in love with Chris Pine when he parachutes down on top of the limo in his tidy whities and then goes to that party. Chris Pine is awesome.
When he shows up in I can't think of any.
Well, I've broken Matt today.
Wet Hot American Summer. The sequel to Wet Hot American Summer. When he shows up in that, it's fantastic.
You know how much I disliked the first one? I didn't even watch that, even if Chris Pine's in it. Yeah, Vincent Gallo could have been in that, and I wouldn't have watched it. That's what I said. I don't know. You know what? I think it has something to do with my early dislike for Bradley Cooper. I think that some of the I bet I know who is Michael Ian Black. Is he involved in that in some way, shape, or form?
It's a lot of people from the state.
Yeah. So that's why. That answers your question. I have a lot of other questions today that we're going to get to.
That obviously means you never watch Viva Variety because Johnny Blue Jeans is like the greatest character of all time.
Nothing. I got nothing for you, sir. But I do know that things are happening.
I love how every episode you just double down on having the worst taste ever.
That's my goal. We should give you a spreadsheet of these and see how they land whenever at the end of the year.
List of stuff everyone loves except for Matt.
Seeing how awesome my opinion is and how terrible other people's opinion are. You know, and I can do that in the real world. I had to chastise my coworker this week for watching a terrible movie. I don't even remember what it was. Bear, I'm judging you now, but that's okay. You still love me. That's all good. I have seen things that are coming, and I want to talk about none of those things because I want to talk about Fletch 2. Hey, it's not going to happen. Let's be honest. There was some stuff in the trades this week about Fletch number 2, John Hamm. Obviously interested.
You and I talked about this years ago, how John Hamm just doesn't seem to be able to make that leap to movie star.
Not at all.
And it's kind of a shame. Like, he rules on TV, but for some reason, like the transition over has been tough.
Can I equate him to...
When he shows up in like a secondary character, that's fine, but like as a lead, it just for some reason it just hasn't clicked, and it's upsetting.
Is he the new age Tom Selleck in that way? Tom Selleck, really good on TV. I don't know if he ever really was greatly successful in films.
Except for like Quigley Down Under and 3 Men and a Baby.
But that wasn't him.
Ton of money.
Yeah, 100%. That just wasn't. I wouldn't say that was.
But that had the other king of TV in it.
Yes,
Ted Danson.
And
it also had Steve Guttenberg coming hot off of Police Academy.
I would like to know.
And Cocoon, right? Or
and
was Cocoon after?
Yeah. No, I think that was before. I'd like to know.
Cocoon's like the most successful movie everyone's forgotten about, and like it's impossible to find now. Like you cannot find it.
When's the last time you actually watched that?
I don't think I've watched it all the way through since probably 1990.
Yeah, I don't know how well it played for me anymore. I might be a little judgmental if I'm being honest.
But part of it's also because it's almost impossible to find.
That is crazy. I wonder why that is.
Yeah. And I think it made like something like $300 million back in the day.
Crap ton of money for that kind of movie.
Crazy amount.
Hey, man, things did happen at the box office this last week. I think it was this last week. Man, I don't know my days from nights, but I can tell you that I saw The Fall Guy last week, and I can tell you that the numbers suggest that I was one of the few people that saw The Fall Guy. My wife asked me because I said, I was curious, whose juice got this movie made, right? So my wife asked me, kind of what I meant by that. I was like, well, it's got to be one of the three, and it's not going to be Ryan because Barbie wasn't Ryan. You got to look back to his actually previous picture for that one. It ended up being the director. That's what I kind of figured out. But at $30 million, nobody's got any juice anymore after this movie. Am I right?
Well, okay, so the problem is, well, first of all, it's hard to market a movie like this because it's based off of a TV show that no one remembers because the TV show like stopped airing over 40 years ago,
And
right?
it's barely based off. I mean, just barely based off of it.
Right, but it's the IP.
Right. Agreed.
Okay.
Yes.
So, but it's so far removed that you're not gonna base it off that. Like, you're not gonna base the marketing. You're not gonna say, "Hey, remember the Fall Guy?" From
Hey,
the
do you know
late
Lee
70s?
Majors? Yeah.
Yeah. So that's kind of hamstringing it. But then you're gonna have people who are like, "The Fall? Wait, what? Wasn't that an old show?" So it's like, how are you gonna market it? And then it's like we're gonna market it based on stunts. But the problem is, then you also have stuff like Furiosa coming out, and Mad Max Fury Road was like the real stunt movie, right? And then you have to sell it as a romantic comedy based on the two leads. And the problem is, people don't really go see movies for movie stars
Yeah.
anymore. So this is a tough sell. And if it had been a cheaper movie, I think you might have seen some better returns. But like, I saw someone on Twitter make a really good point. They said no one, when talking about Fall Guy before the release, talked about what it was about.
Right.
And like, I was able to figure it out because I saw some junket stuff that I was cutting, right? But like, if you go watch all the trailers, you have no idea what it's about, and you kind of need to know what your story is, or some idea of like what you're getting into, as opposed to just stuff blow up,
Sure.
you know. But who got it made? Man,
It's the
I
Bullet Train
don't
director.
know.
I feel like that after Bullet Train, this was his. Here's my balls on the table. I want to do this movie.
You,
Kind of
you
thing.
think he just went in with a solid pitch? He's like, guys,
Yeah.
here's what we're gonna do, and guess what? We can call it the Fall Guy, and that means we have the IP. It's something that we're not gonna have to pay for. But yeah, it's weird. Like, maybe if it was called something besides the Fall Guy,
Yeah, if it would have just
you
been
know?
his own original thing, that might have been better. Certainly, they did reshoots at least a little bit to play up that romance angle because they worked well together. So we was hoping that would
Yeah.
be an extra sell in the movie. But I want to talk about this, and I love to get your insight on these kind of things because why? I just need you to answer why. So obviously, there was a lot of stunts in this movie, right? And it looked really cool, and it did a lot of things, blah blah blah. But also, there's a lot of CGI still in it to finish up the shot or to make it grand or whatever
Yeah.
it is. And when you do that, I can speak for me, and I've heard other people online speak the same way. That automatically takes me out of it a little bit, and it gives less power to the awesome stunt stuff that you're doing, right? So
right?
why
Well, I mean,
and how can we stop that?
okay, so it's something that no one seems to complain about with Mission Impossible. And Mission Impossible, they keep saying
I
all of our
did.
stunts are 100% in camera, and they're not. They're like every shot has some kind of
That
CGI
train
cleanup.
stuff from the last one, ugh.
Right. Okay. So, and this is something I actually noticed with the latest Indiana Jones last summer.
Mm-hmm.
Now there's scenes where they have an explosion, like a relatively small explosion, and it's CG,
Yep.
right? Like it's not really there. And all I could think of was it used to be when you went to go see a big movie, that meant you weren't going to have stuff blown up as a miniature. They were really going to do it, right? Or they were going to have a miniature that's like 20 feet long as opposed to 90, right? Just to show this is how much money we have. Like, this is how much stuff we can afford to blow up. That's just kind of the way things used to be. And now we're replacing all of that stuff that used to get people into the theater with just like computer. right? And I think people have a knee jerk against that. Now, the sad thing is, um, okay, so visual effects have always played a part in stunts. Like there's that famous shot of Chaplin roller skating, and he's like in a library, and
Hmm.
he's right next to, uh, like a hole in the floor, and that's a matte painting.
Right.
So those have always been there. I just think that there's something to be said. I was rewatching the first X-Men movie. There's a scene where Magneto lifts up two cop cars and drops them on two other cop cars, and they did that live action. And I think there's something to be said about smaller stunts that are more realistic as opposed to making things huge all the time.
Agreed.
Like, one of the most effective stunts in any of the Mission Impossible movies is just him holding on to a plane as it's taking off. And yeah, there's CG in that where they get rid of his wires and everything, but he's really on a
It's really
plane.
on the plane. Yeah.
Right. And I think there's a lot to be said for that. Um, but the problem is, no one ever wants to keep things smaller. They just want to get bigger and bigger. But that's how you get from the first Fast and the Furious
To outer space.
to the latest one where he's like surfing down in his car, like racing down a, a dam while it's exploding around it. You
Yeah.
know?
Yeah. I did that in '98. It's a different time though. Back
Yeah.
then. Different time.
Right.
I don't like it. I would like you guys to stop it. Spend less money. Also, stop with terrible, terrible fake fire. If you can do good-looking
Man,
fake fire,
that's a
then that's
big
one
one.
thing. But yeah, the fire is such a. I get the hazards and all those kind of things. I get that,
But the
but
thing is, we used to do it. It's kind
exactly.
of like
We
it's
used to
kind
go
of
to the
like
moon too.
and NASA said we haven't sent people back because we lost the
I
technology,
saw that.
which is the biggest load of horse crap I've ever
Yep.
read.
Hmm.
But I kind of think about how after the first Iron Man, they really didn't use a live action suit.
Right.
There are a couple of scenes where they have like from the waist up, but after that, like never. And all I could think of was, yeah, it's uncomfortable, but like, did it have to always be CG? Because, we have three RoboCop movies with awesome suits, and they look great. Or like Guillermo del Toro always makes like the craziest like animatronic and makeup based creatures,
Yeah,
you
especially for
know?
the fish sex movie.
Or like look at Hellboy 2. Hellboy 2 has some of the most amazing production design, which the the art directors guild, man.
We will definitely get to that later. I will
Yeah.
just for me, the one word for this is always tangibility. When you do CG, it's not tangible. Like there's always you're not good enough.
It's the verisimilitude. Like
Yep.
you have to believe it's there. That was the word that Richard Donner had printed like in his office, like in the offices when they were making Superman. Because he's like, you have to believe that it exists.
Yep.
And part of it, I think, is not going too far. People believe so much, but then it'll kind of break. And that's kind of one thing that I think Spielberg does really well. He's probably the best at is like he will give you kind of a grounded world where there's like one thing that's special, like one thing that's magical, but everything else is really grounded except for that one thing. But I think once you go past that one or two things,
I think
uh,
Zemeckis might be another dude that's on the list that does that as well. Hey,
uh, I,
sometimes I'm not all the time, but I think about Back to the Future too. It was
I
very
don't think since
minimalist in the expectation of the things that at least me personally was expecting, but it
yeah,
worked.
yeah. The only thing that's magical in that is the fact that they're traveling through time.
Well, okay,
You know,
that's as magical as I get. Do you know who's not magical? And we're going to go to a new segment that's called I've had an opinion for a long time, but the internet was against me, but now they're with me, so this is going to be a support, and we will not get canceled. Probably, let's see, here we go. Seinfeld made a movie about Pop Tarts. I have some
oh man,
Seinfeld opinions, sir. Never liked the man. Not as a human being. I don't know the dude. I don't give a crap. Never enjoyed his humor. It's never been for me. I think it's just terrible. And so now he's trying to get into.
Deal?
Oh my god! And now he's trying to get into movies and then complain about movies and be involved and then make a stupid Pop Tart movie because they made a Cheetos movie. And I don't even know anything about the movie, quite honestly. I've heard some of the stuff about it. Doesn't sound great. But what I'm saying
I've
is,
heard nothing but bad things about it. I haven't watched it.
can we just not cancel him? I just don't want to see him anymore. It's like, I mean, you've been with us for 50 years. Can't okay? That's enough, right?
He has enough money to never work again.
Sure. Well, I mean,
You
he has
know?
enough money to murder 3 people, get off, and still never work again. OJ, R.I.P.
But like someone said in that interview where he was complaining, like, "Where's the latest Seinfeld?" It's like, well, first of all, It's Always Sunny's been on for like 17 years. And also, let's not forget, Curb Your Enthusiasm has been on for like 20 years.
Also don't like that.
And it's about the guy who made your show. Like there are other shows out there, but like in terms of where's the latest water cooler show that everyone's talking about like the day after that's on network TV? Well, guess what? Network TV is not really doing shows like that anymore.
Yeah, you couldn't
know?
have sounded
But-
any older when you said that,
No,
Not you, him. Him.
That's what he's.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's like, do you remember when the first season of Stranger Things or Cobra Kai came out? Like, yeah, those are the new shows.
Yep.
But
there are still good sitcoms on too.
The
And
but the sitcom isn't what it was. But then again, in the 80s and 90s, we had 8 trillion of them.
I watch
You
them.
know.
Every single one of them, give them to me. Okay, that's all. That was the end of that segment. Let's talk about the article we both read this week about independent filmmakers are beginning to see the avenues that content TV offers that films do not. First and foremost, I'm going to start off this segment by making my declaration that I've uncanceled my content protest. I'm now back in on watching a moderate amount of content because I'm interested by this idea because so many great artists are.
But like, it's not really content if it's not there just to fill a void. If these are indie
Yes.
filmmakers who say, I can better tell my story in 10, 30-minute episodes as opposed to a 2.5-hour movie, then that's not really content. That's just changing the form, right? It's kind of like Hideo Kojima, could have been directing movies for the last 30 years, but instead he's made video games with like 12-hour stories.
Sure.
The thing is, like, it's weird because it's hard enough to make a short film.
Yeah.
It's hard enough to make a feature film. And now to independently make a 6, 8, 10 episode series that's gonna punch up there with the big boys, it seems that's going to be the hardest ask of them all, right? Unless it's basically just people sitting in rooms talking.
Sure.
The cool thing is with YouTube and places like Film Hub, they do take series from people, so you can make and release and profit off of them. But again, it's hard to get people to invest in an 83-minute drama that's an indie with people you don't know. Asking them to sit down for several episodes is a huge ask.
And I'm going to go ahead and shoot this idea down as soon as I pitch it. But I think about some of my favorite creators that have gone into that avenue, and I worry about the edit. I want to point specifically to Nicholas Refn's film, the 10-part thing that he did on Amazon, right?
Yeah.
If you chop that down in half, I might have finished it. One person might have finished it, but I
got,
worry.
like, I think episode 3, and I'm like, yo, this is
ridiculous. Yeah,
taking some time.
I'm worried that you like that. I got show notes here. Show notes. I'm worried that longer time frame sometimes isn't always better for people. Okay, and let's talk about this season's Fargo. This season's Fargo could have been 2 episodes because everything else was fluff.
The from everything that I've heard, Star Wars Kenobi started out as a movie and they said, "Hey, let's make this into a series." And then you watch it and you look at the series and you're like, "Oh, this could have been a movie instead of a, 10 episode series."
Mm.
And then this dude came along, the Kai Patterson, and he recut that 10 episode series into a 2.5 hour movie, and all of a sudden it's awesome again. You know?
Hmm.
Meanwhile, you know, just to stick with Star Wars. Um, we watched Star Wars Episode One this past week in the theater with our kids, and it feels like that was like a 9 hour movie that was cut down to 2 hours, and there's a lot of stuff missing. And it's like, oh, that could have been a series. Like you put like a series worth of plot into this one movie, and it feels like it.
Subsection segment movies that I watch at the gym while I'm on the elliptical machine. I was in the gym on May 4th, so I have now seen 45 minutes of a Star Wars that I'm not sure which one it was. And my review is, I still feel this.
What happened in it?
I saw it was one of the originals because Carrie Fisher was involved and Jabba the Hutt was involved.
She was in.
And
that's Return of the Jedi.
Okay, there you go. Boom. Seen 45 minutes of it.
And I'm sure the proper way to experience those movies is while running on a treadmill.
I was on the elliptical. Also,
On the elliptical, sorry.
now I'm really going to get some hate mail for this one. My observation at the time, I'm just saying, as I'm listening to my podcast on my earphones, this movie is awful loud. Maybe this is why Americans like this movie, because it's just loud, bang, bam, boom kind of stuff, and we're simple that way. I wonder, I'm not saying that's the case. I'm just saying I
It's
wonder
not.
if potentially...
Okay,
might
if
be a
you've
thing.
watched 4 minutes of the 9 in that series, and you didn't watch it the way like it's supposed to be watched,
Mhm.
yeah, you're not right about that. Sorry, you're not. That's actually the only movie that I consistently fall asleep during. Return of the Jedi.
Well,
Every
I mean,
time
I
they
would fall
go to
asleep too, I
Endor,
get that, yeah.
it gets too quiet for me, and nothing happens, and I fall asleep.
20 minutes.
And then I
of just
wake up, and then I wake up at the end.
Yeah, it was unnecessary. Unnecessary. I don't know who that guy was that directed it, but I don't know. Maybe find another
Richard
line of
Marquand.
work. I'm just kidding. I just sidetracked this because I just want to talk about that real quick. Okay, let's go back to independent filmmakers doing TV instead of films. Do you?
Well, I mean,
would you consider that next time? I mean, you did the film the last time. Would you consider doing a TV show?
I've been thinking about it, but again, it's you're looking at doubling, tripling your work, to get something out.
Yes.
And
Or just not editing
if I,
at all.
I'll say this: I have several projects that I would love to do, but it would require more money, because they're bigger in scale.
Right.
Because I don't think there are a whole lot of stories that I have wanted to tell that couldn't be told as a movie. Also, my problem with TV series now is they tend to be I don't like the serialized nature of them.
Ah,
Okay.
I can understand that yeah, for sure.
I like being able to go back to Star Trek: The Next Generation or, Married to Children or The Simpsons and say, I want to watch the one where this happens. To me, if I'm going to sit down and invest myself in a story, I kind of want to be able to sit down in one sitting. Right now, that's not to say I like one thing that's really hard to do well in a TV series is to do episodes that are contained but then fit into an overarching narrative, right? Star Wars does that really well. Friends is a show that actually does that really well, where it's like the one about or the one with is how they title all their episodes, right? And that's true. Like you can go and say, I want to watch the one with their wedding,
Right.
Okay. And you can watch the wedding one or the one where Rachel gives birth, and it still fits into a bigger story, but you can watch them in bite-sized chunks. And that's why TV tends to work so well, because you can kind of go in and pick up on things here and there, right? But modern TV doesn't seem to do that. Like if you miss an episode in the middle, you are completely lost.
No, all that I agree with all that you said. I do wonder if going forward, why would we not? I just don't understand why we don't do more of the British TV model. 4 episodes, right? 4 or 5 episodes.
Right.
That to me tells a complete story without having fluff. I want to again point to this season's Fargo. Like I think it was 10 episodes. It felt like 17. The story was so discombobulated and loose. You make that show, again, 4 episodes, super tight story. You've got Hambone in there. You've got the fantastic lady that I apologize, I don't remember her name right now. She was wonderful. You just keep it to like 4 characters. And of course, Winston from New Girl. You got to have him. That guy's the best. Can you come on our podcast sometime? I'll come on your podcast too. You're fantastic. Thank you, Lamar. Anywho's, cutting down. Hasn't that always been what we've been taught? Trim, no fat, and now it's just like, whatever. Also, I have a question before I come back to you. If it's made on Amazon, does it even matter? It's like a tree that falls in the forest. I'll give you probably one of the most important things that could have happened the last decade was that Underground Railroad show that they did, right? So that director that, again,
I didn't even know that existed.
Exactly, but that is with an A-plus director, an A-plus cast about like this huge moment in history. Yeah, you don't even know it existed.
Well, the funny thing is, one of my favorite shows recently was on Amazon, and like, there's no word about. Like, I think they're filming season 2 right now, but it's Open Range.
Oh, yeah, they filmed that in my town. Right?
Yeah, great series. Really bonkers. Nobody watched it, right? I really wish we would end shows, because like the first season of Stranger Things was perfection.
Mm-hmm.
And not saying there are things in seasons 2, 3, and 4 I didn't enjoy. I enjoyed a lot of it. But part of me thinks you end Stranger Things with that story. Stranger Things season 2, let's do a new story somewhere else with different characters.
Sure. Same vibe. Yep. Mm-hmm.
Right.
The way that Fargo does it.
Yes. And you don't even have to interlock them the way Fargo does. But there's a show that I got into. They have 2 seasons of it. The first season is just remarkable. Second season kind of suffered from some production with during COVID, right? Called Raised by Wolves.
Mm-hmm. I couldn't
really
explain to you anything that happened in that show, but I did enjoy it.
Bonkers sci-fi show, right? And the last episode, season 2, ends with this character dying and then coming back to life, and all of a sudden floating like 20 feet up in the air, upside down in an inverted crucified pose. And that's how the season ends. And I'm like, oh, next season's going to be awesome. Guess what happened?
No, next season.
They got canceled. They got to the last episode they did. I think, did they do 3 or 4 seasons of Last Man on Earth?
I did 4.
End on a cliffhanger?
Mm-hmm.
Not picked up. And this is happening over and over and over. And I really wish we would go to that model of like the show Spaced that Edgar Wright did, where it's like there's like 13 total episodes and that's it.
That's all you need.
And I really wish that would happen, but the thing is, when you do TV here, you have to sign for like 6 years.
Yeah, they're just going to exploit it till they can't exploit it anymore. That's their model.
Just to be clear, they'll run it for like 10 years, and then they'll say, "Hey, let's do Young Sheldon."
Oh my god!
And then they're going to end Young Sheldon after it being on forever. And they're like, "Hey, let's do slightly older Sheldon."
Yeah, that's lazy work.
And then they'll finally, after that one ends, it's like, you know what? Let's do Old Man Sheldon and bring Jim Parsons back. It's just. It never seems to end.
I don't understand. And I was not lying when I said A-plus director. Barry Jenkins did that Underground Railroad show. So, that was pretty important that nobody freaking noticed. Academy Award winner Barry Jenkins did that, and that makes me sad. I don't understand that at all.
Oh,
yes.
Talking about ending things. For the last 5 months, all I've heard is FX saying we are not doing a season 2 of Shogun because we ended where the book ends. We're done. We can't do any more story. And yesterday I read season two's probably going to happen. They're trying to get the main actor back or something, right? And then what was the big news this end of this last week? Oh, well, we're going to have Peter Jackson come back and he's going to produce two more to Lord of the Rings movies.